Hello, I'm your host, Mike Gallup, and this is the Consumer VC, where we discuss the intersection of venture capital and consumer innovation. This show is brought to you by Propeller Industries, the leading strategic finance and accounting partner for venture stage companies. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe on YouTube or whichever platform that you're listening on. And if you want the full experience, subscribe to my newsletter at theconsumervc.com. I send fundraising updates of all the latest deals in consumer that week, and you'll receive new episodes straight to your inbox. All content and episodes are for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not investment advice. Our guest today is Jeff Byers, who is the CEO of Momentous. Momentous produces high-quality research-backed supplements and helps simplify what are the core supplements you should be taking every day. I love this episode. I don't think we've ever had a story quite like this, and I really appreciate Jeff being so open to talking about it. So Jeff originally founded Amp Human. Amp Human is a human performance company dedicated to helping athletes of all levels reach their potential. And he later ended up acquiring Momentous and taking over Momentous. We talk about that journey, starting one company and then acquiring another company, why Momentous became an attractive acquisition target to begin with, how that whole transaction came to pass, why he never thought originally he didn't set out to actually run a supplement company, and his overall approach to different sales channels and growth. Without further ado, here's Jeff. Jeff, thanks so much for joining me. I know it's been a long time, and this has been a long time coming, but thanks so much for bearing with me. How you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. Excited to be on here.
Oh, well, really appreciate it. I am as well excited to have you. So you were a pro football player. You went to USC. I also went there, fight on. What was it like transitioning from pro football into having a normal job, or at least going into business, transitioning into business after you retired?
Yeah, that's a really loaded question. Go Trojans. We're not very good right now. It's kind of sad. But I would say I transitioned out of football. I was pretty unusually equipped to transition out, right? Like early in my college career, I had football taken away from me from injuries, et cetera, and like really got to think about what life after ball would look like for me. And so I took a very different approach and was very proactive about post football. I will say I only worked a normal job for like a year post football. Like being an entrepreneur early stage is not a normal job. And founding a company and being the CEO, like I skipped a ton of steps. And some of it was just gritting your teeth, and some of it was right place, right time. And so right after ball, I got into finance, realized really quickly that it was not my jam. Tried to take kind of a lateral slash maybe a little vertical move in it, and just was like, that wasn't it either. And just like realized I wanted to build something. I wanted to be a part of an early stage company. I wanted to really, right, like go back to what I loved about sports was like insane amount of accountability, really high stress, right? Ability to work in really high functioning teams and achieve at a really high level versus just be right a cog in the system, which was not what I was really passionate about. And I just love this feeling in the belly of just like, right, lots of pressure, lots of stress. You control what you can control, and you just run as hard as you can to make that happen. And then I would say like, call it the last 6 years of Momentous, 6.5 years of Momentous, and then 3.5 years of the biotech I was at before that is not normal. Like the ride is not what people do.
Well, let's dig into the not normal. Let's dig into, also becoming an NFL player is also not normal as well. But let's dig into the other part of the not normal. What was the inspiration and how did it begin, the starting Amp Human? And also why start a health and nutrition company?
Yeah. If we kind of go a little backwards, like never wanted to be a supplement company or a sports nutrition company. That was never the goal. I actually fought it for a really long time. But if we go way back, right, my first kind of foray, I joined an early stage biotech where I met my co-founder, Erica Good, who's our president. in the org right now. And I knew nothing about science, right? Like I got my MBA at USC, like you did. I took oceanography in undergrad. That was like my science outside of high school. And joining an early stage biotech as like employee four, that was a very science heavy org. And organization was a really big step into my uncomfort, like being uncomfortable. And if I knew what I do now, I would have never joined that company because they were way earlier than I ever imagined. I just didn't understand, right, what that was like. But I joined early in the company and had like an executive role, right? Not because my experience warranted that or business acumen. It was because we had this cool idea to create a potentially consumer facing product with the technology we're developing medicine. And number two is they needed help, like they wanted some help raising some capital, right? And both those things of like a consumer facing application was in sports. Check, had lots of relationships there. And B, right, out of my finance world, also playing the NFL, I knew people that had capital. And so it was like this really interesting. They took a risk on me, I took a risk on them, and jumped really deep into it. That kind of spun off this passion project that ultimately became what is now Momentous, is what the public sees as Momentous. Uh, but we started using this technology. It was a transdermal delivery technology. We're using it to deliver drugs, and like really early, right? Really, really early. They're now in phase 2 clinical trials and doing some really cool things, but they're still working. But this passion project, this consumer facing thing, that ultimately became right one of our products, PR Lotion, which is a really niche product, like totally like we thought it was going to be huge, right? Like all I think early things, it's like you find like, oh, it's going to be so much different than it is now. But we got a lot of early traction with that product. We got early clinical research and data behind it that was like, oh, it's doing something that's never been done before, right? Like having an impact. And we had really, really good elite athlete, elite performer feedback. And so we got in early days into like elite special forces and Tour de France winners and right, like marathon champions and things like this that right, like we're just working with the most elite, and some of that had to do with my background, but this technology had really cool implications and was showing good results, both both in clinical research but also in practice. Um, and we
And
kind of
and and
yeah,
this is the PR lotion,
this is
right?
PR Lotion, and so basically,
Yeah.
like, not to nerd out a little bit, but like PR Lotion delivers sodium bicarbonate or bicarbonate into the body, and that's just baking soda. Sodium bicarbonate is baking soda, but bicarbonate is what helps regulate acidity in the muscle. So when you think about when you train really hard or you go really long, you produce acid, right? People call it lactic acid, right? You produce acid, and that ability to clear that acid is one of the limiting factors in our ability to go hard or for longer, right? So, right, a more basic muscle is more efficient, right, and can go longer and harder. So it's really, really advantageous to do this. The challenge is when you take sodium bicarbonate orally, it causes a massive GI issue. If you remember when you were in, I don't know, sixth grade and you made the volcano with baking soda and vinegar, that's your stomach, right? And that happens. And so, like, when you think about enhancing performance, massive GI distress, like typically does not enhance performance. It makes you crap your pants, right? And so this whole thing, like sodium bicarbonate, has been well known, well studied, well used. If you get the timing wrong, it has problems, and it's not practical for a lot of different athletic uses. So that's kind of the gist of what PR Lotion did, and it like been studied for now like 6 decades, right? Our body naturally produces bicarbonate. We just can't produce enough. Hard to take exogenously, like super commonly known substance, etc. So we're doing something really unique, and we had this, vision that it could be an awesome product for like weekend warriors and all of that. It just turns out like the use case is pretty small, um, and the experience of the product, right? It's not like a Jergens lotion. It was like a big, thick sunscreen, and it was just unless you're doing really hard, really long things, it wasn't crazy practical to use. But anyways, so we got all this, and it was called something else in the biotech, but basically it got far enough in the biotech that we had enough kind of commercial support, interest, etc. that we're at this point of like, what do we do with this cool product, right? This is a biotech working on drug delivery versus a consumable company, like a consumer biotech. Very different things. It's like working in labs and like doing clinical research to like we need to produce inventory, create a marketing campaign, like strategy, all of this. And so it just wasn't like they weren't compatible, and the investor base wasn't compatible either. And so it was like, what do we do as an executive team? What do we do with this product or this technology for these other use cases? And we weren't far enough along to sell it, nor did they want to sell it, like truly sell it. Right? It was like a damn shame to kill it. It was like, we're doing really cool things. And so I was like, what do we do? And I was like, why don't I, and my co-founder spin it out, right? And we could create, right, a company around this. And, the vision was we can create the next great human performance company. What the hell does that mean? Don't know. Still trying to figure that out. But it sounded really cool. And that was kind of our early pitch. We had this, right, this proprietary technology, right, patented technology to deliver a known substance to the skin. We were at the forefront of high performance, working and doing the coolest things, investing in clinical research. And we had won a government innovation contract super early that helped fund us, that matched private investment dollars, that really drove us into making a commercial product. But like, it was being at the forefront that made it really special for us. And so that was in 2018 when we spun it out and started this company called Amp Human, which is still the underlying entity behind Momentous on there. But what we found out, like a lot of people, is like the product was awesome and people loved it, but it didn't translate to a big group of people, right? It translated to enough and people were interested, but we needed more.
The total addressable market just wasn't nearly as big as you thought it would be.
Yeah, and we had visions to use this technology to deliver other things and all this, and it just turned out that, right, like it was like that the market didn't need that, right? Like you don't need to, put another vitamin or something on your skin instead of digesting it. Like it's easy to absorb things through the GI system, and so it's like, right, we found a great use case that wasn't able to take exogenously, right, through the GI system. But most things aren't that way, right? And so it's like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like protein is a good example. Like, no need to deliver protein topically. You just eat protein. And so, anyways, what we had though, Mike, was this unprecedented access in this ecosystem. And, that was between pro sports, elite military, and kind of this really upper class of, what I'll call weekend warriors, like really, really upper class of like people really invested in their athletic performance. Like think of Ironman, but not professionals. Like like you go to Kona and participate in Ironman. Like that was our core consumer outside of pro and college sports. And it was like, what do we do with this brand that we had? Like we have access, and we looked at buying a bunch of different companies. We looked at hardware, software.
You're looking at buying different companies because you have a lot of access when it comes to people that
Yeah,
deeply have to care about health and nutrition, right? Whether they're weekend warriors and um uh weekend warriors, even in the military or other ways.
how do we
But
leverage that into a big total addressable market?
into much bigger, so essentially finding products that actually can service a much more wide ranging
Yeah,
people. Okay.
exactly. We looked at a bunch of different things, and like this is where we never wanted to be a supplement company. Like we had a board, and I remember like there was the board meeting before COVID, end of 2019, and it was like, let's go into supplements. It's a supernatural fit, and I'm like, hell no, right? And it's like we're a biotech, consumer biotech. Like we're doing things that have never been done before. Like that space is not cool. Like it takes, right, anybody with a dog can start a supplement company, right? Like it's not hard. It's like, and it's dirty, like my perception. And like there's not, like there's some good players, but a lot of not great players in here. And it's like brand first, not science first, not being at the forefront. It's like, let's just build a brand and make money, right? And not product.
Did you ever think, I know that supplements were, I guess, temporarily off the table, or you didn't think that supplements made sense, but did you ever think that maybe if you did do supplements, it made sense to build it yourself?
Yeah. So that's kind of where, so COVID hits, right? And we actually acquired another technology and had a huge TAM. And it turned out we couldn't commercialize it. We couldn't scale it up. Like it didn't go from the lab to commercialization. Right? It had really cool clinical research behind it. And we tried to commercialize it. We literally could not manufacture it at scale, like outside of a lab.
Just way too expensive to manufacture it.
It just didn't convert into scale up. Like it's just some of the tech just like you couldn't scale it, and so it was like never able. Like the market was there, right? Like we just couldn't replicate the clinical results at scale. Just couldn't do it, right? And that was hard. And we bet a lot on that. Like we invested a lot into that, but we always had this, you know, supplement thing on the radar. And I had a friend mentor that was like, why do you not want to go into this space so bad? And I'm like, I just don't like, it's not who we are. Like part of it was my ego. It's like, we do clinical research. We're funded by the government. Like we're innovative. Like it was almost like we were above it. Like my ego said that. And he was like, dude, you've been using supplements your whole life as a professional and elite athlete. Like that just means there's an opportunity to do something different here, right? Like if you don't relate to any of the companies and you feel like there's a lack of trust, that means there's something missing in the market because you're not the only one, right? Like don't think of it as I don't want to think of it as like this needs change and there's an opportunity to build something special. So you asked, did we try to build it ourselves? We started down that path, and I realized really quickly it's really easy to make a supplement company. Really easy. Really, really hard to do it right. Like incredibly hard to do it right. And it was kind of like one of those epiphanies of like how unauthentic to our brand of like a leading high performance company, like working with the best, have won a government contract to actually just like build it ourselves and just like have another Me Too protein powder or have another like not with the right roots and like how slow is that ramp to do it right and do it good rather than not. So it was like one of those epiphanies is like it's gonna be really slow to do it the right way, authentic to what was Amp Human. And I'd gotten to know one of the board members for this company called Momentous, right? They were a little smaller than AMP was at the time. And Momentous was born in pro and college sports. They built, right, a sports nutrition line with the top dietitians in the world, right, essentially. And it's like, how do they do that? And they had incredible penetration into that space, like really pretty unprecedented from that. But that was the majority of their focus. And what they were looking to how do we expand beyond it, right? And, you know, the founder of that company, Matt Wan, and a handful of others, like did an incredible job creating incredible products, right? And focusing on that one space. Their board, they knew they needed to go beyond, and Matt was right a younger kid at the time, like he is, but very successful entrepreneur now, right? Like when you look at what he built and like how he positioned it, but they were looking to how do we, right, change leadership, and they were a little too small to like really bring in a high powered new executive team, and it was just like in this kind of weird spot. They were in a good spot as a business, but not a great spot. And it's like, how about Momentous, or how about Amp Human acquires Momentous? And that was early 2021, like Q1, end of Q1 of 2021. We started those discussions of like, what happens if Amp Human buys Momentous? And it became really clear it was the best path for us to go fast. We can buy know-how, we can buy really high quality products and understand the certification, the sourcing, and all of that, and like just cut through a lot of it and have an authentic story. Like we work with 150 pro and college sports teams with these products right now, right? And so we closed that deal in essentially July 1st of 2021.
On the product specifically for supplements, what impressed you most with Momentous when you were engaged with them and found out about this company that might be up for sale?
I think there were a couple things. Like first off, they had right the core essentials in their product line and how they design them from quality of ingredients, where those ingredients are being sourced from, right, was really, really powerful. And the manufacturers that they had chosen, right, which were like pretty hard for an early brand to get into. Like, there's a lot of manufacturers in our space. Some are great, some are bad, right? But like to get two good ones sometimes is hard as an early brand. And then number two is they had all the certifications that mattered in the space, right? Like realistically, a lot of people say they're third party certified. Very few of them are very rigorous. And what Momentous did is they had the absolute peak of the pinnacle of rigorous of third party testing. Like what is actually on the label is in it in the right amounts, period, and it doesn't contain anything bad, right? Banned substances. So it's not just label claim. It's this called NSF certified for sport, and like it it has nothing to do like sport. It just means it's been cleared to be in pro and college sports, but it is really the highest standard of certification that you can get in our category. And that was really important. And then number three is they had the validation of the product, right? Being an ex-pro athlete, you don't bring things into the locker room that aren't high quality and right proven to work. And so that whole thing, it's like they had like what you could see from like quality of ingredients, how they manufactured, all that stuff, to certification, to actual proof that they are in the best places, right? Prove those other things. Because there's a lot of brands out there that are great, sports focused, but they don't do any business in pro and college sports. And that's not like, that's because likely the products don't live to the standards that are required. And for me, if we were going to go into the space, we're going to make the highest level products possible, right? That's like that, like that is a requirement, and that's what they had. So that's kind of how we got to it, and they had so much opportunity, right? Like clearly, like it's like we were able to build on it.
So totally can see the opportunity by building, a super high quality a product that they have with Momentous, and it's certainly fair to say a much more maybe accessible product than you all had originally with like the PR lotion, right? Just a uh, much larger TAM, and they also had access though too, right? Because they also were working with college sports. Is
Yeah,
that
they were
right?
working with college and pro sports, but they had a
Okay.
very different vision, right?
Oh, they
When I
did.
would say
Okay.
that of like they were trying to make really, really high quality products, right? I'm trying to disrupt this category, right? Like we're trying to do it better than it's been done before. Invest in clinical research, change policy, right? Like really, really think about it and not go down the same playbook that has been played in our category for a very long time, right? Like the goal and what we had that they didn't. They had incredible access in pro and college sports. It was this ecosystem of high performance outside of it, of the influential people, and I would say this mission to really do it very differently, right? And break some of the molds that we had. Like we were looking at this category of like, how do we disrupt the shit out of it, not just take market share, right? Like we were coming in from a perspective of consumer biotech of like working with the Department of Defense on bespoke problems and how do you optimize right certain things in here, like very, very different approach. But what we're able to do is like leverage amps, like really deep ecosystem of high performance, and combined with Momentous's like deep penetration and high quality build of products with big TAMs and smash them together. And what that gave us was people like Dr. Huberman. And what that gave us was people like Andy Galpin and Stacy Sims and Kelly Starrett. It's like all these people that were around and knew of AMP, right? That we had gotten close to at AMP Human because of our work in the DoD or clinical research. Like, because a lot of these are at the tip of the pointy spear Then we gave them an opportunity with all these products that were built and used by the best to say, hey, we're different and we have the best supplements. We de-risk that category a lot for them, right? Whereas we are committed to science, we're committed to advocacy, we're committed to innovation, right? Also, we have protein, creatine, omegas, big TAMs, big TAMs that they can get behind. And a lot of them hadn't worked with companies in our category because our category is messy and they're like, we just won't do a lot, or I'm not like in love with it. And so we are able to kind of smash the two together and create, right? 1 + 1 = a lot more than two.
Well, I also like backing up a little bit, just talking a little bit about the supplement category. When you were a professional athlete, and even in college, and also an elite high school player, one of the top recruits in the country, how did you approach even buying supplements? And how did you make those decisions for yourself in terms of what you actually should put in your body?
That's a great question. It evolved over time for sure. And I'll say, like, in the early 2000s when I was in high school, 2000, 2004, I was in high school, was just taking anything I could to gain weight, right? And how do I recover, et cetera. But that was like really early days of what I would call like sports nutrition and all of that. But you can throw Gatorade into this mix. Like Gatorade is sports nutrition. Gatorade is a supplement, right? Like electrolytes, however you want to define it. Like I would call that in this category that we play in, right? Used incredibly heavy, but didn't there wasn't any of this NSF. There wasn't any of this, like everybody kind of knew like, ooh, supplements are, they started in bodybuilding, like, but who knows? Like, how do they go? What do you use? And so it was kind of a cluster, I will say. Like, you kind of went in the store and you listened to what people told you should do, and those guys were 24-year-old gym rats, right? And probably made bad choices that didn't have, like, either wasted my money or took things that weren't probably the most beneficial, or didn't do anything, or potentially did bad things, right? On there. Go to college, fast forward, and like that um, that tightened so much. Meaning, like, there was now control in college of like, hey, you get tested for banned substances. Like, you have to do these things. And my early days in college, there was a lot of impermissible things, not banned, impermissible, meaning that the teams could not give them to you. And that has opened up drastically over the last decade and a half or so. But like, they couldn't give you omega 3s. They couldn't give you some of these things, and now that it's grown. But like, what I learned is like there is a real place for proper supplementation, right? Of nutrition or other foundational things that matter, right? And I dabbled in a bunch, and I'm a performance nerd, right? And like I gravitated towards the strength coaches. And guess what? They were into this space and they talked us through it, and like gravitated towards the PTs and all that, and just learned a lot and knew there was a role. But it was still, right, like you still just aren't sure. Like it's always been like, what is actually good for you? Does it actually have what it in it? Like, you know, and then as a consumer, you kind of just buy low cost. You fast forward to the NFL, really strict, and they started like NFL like gave you a lot more things. But this was like my time in the NFL was 2010 to 2014, and it was like the birth of like nutritionists being on staff and providing supplements and nutrition more regularly and geared towards players. But what you see there is like they were only bringing in a couple brands, right? And they were being very thoughtful on what and how to give. You didn't have 50 things, you had like 4 things that they gave you, right? And it was like the most important things that drove the biggest impact, right? And it was this like cutting through kind of the BS Wild West. And what pro sports showed me was like there is a difference between good companies and bad companies. The challenge is like when I came out, like I didn't know where to pick, and I didn't really relate to a lot of the companies like as a brand, right? Like it's like some of the really high quality companies make great products. They feel like a pharmaceutical company, like that. I don't like. That's not somebody who's helping me achieve my life goals or performance goals. Like I don't think of it. And so like, how do you build right a brand? And so you have like You have almost like brands for brand's sakes, and then you have really high quality products. And like, how do you bring that in the middle to have like, you have a brand that stands for something and you have the best quality products and you meet all of that? Like there's just this, like, there was this big divide for me as a consumer in it, which is why I didn't want to go into the space. It's like, A, I don't trust it, or B, I don't relate to it. Right. And it's like, but I still buy the things. And it's like, you kind of buy them like, I think I'm buying something good. Anyway, so long-winded answer, definitely.
This episode is brought to you by Propeller Industries. If you run a high growth business and you're focused on profitability, extending your runway, and improving your operational efficiency, you probably need a finance and accounting whiz that will grow with you. Well, instead of hiring someone full time, what would be cost effective is working with Propeller Industries. Propeller Industries is a leading strategic finance and accounting partner for venture stage companies and has partnered with over 1,000 startups and high growth businesses across consumer products, consumer tech, and enterprise. Some of the brands that they've worked with are Liquid Death, Olipop, Hims, Farmer's Dog, Away, MoviePass, and Giphy. Propeller also provides specialized support for fundraising and M&A with transaction advisory services. Propeller's TA team of former investment bankers and investors can step in on more of a project basis when pursuing full-scale financing and M&A. There's a link to Propeller Industries in the show notes if you want to learn more information. No, for sure. How will well no, not at all, not at all. How did you think about as well, penetrating the NFL or penetrating, college sports and actually, having Momentous be the preferred, supplement vendor per se of teams in the, in sports? Because I imagine that's pretty probably challenging in terms of actually becoming like a trusted partner for.
Yeah, I would say, like, first off, you have to have the right products. Second, you have to have the right ingredient, like, and sourcing story. And third, you have to have the certifications. None of that matters if you don't have the relationships, right? Like, those are all givens, and then you have to go build the relationships in those teams. And so the relationships are a big deal, right? And again, like, a lot of these people who are like, these aren't buyers, like, these are dietitians that are working with the athletes every single day. Like buying supplements is a secondary. They have to do it, but it's not their primary. Their primary job is making sure the team can perform. Like, they don't have buyers that are like buying these things,
Right, right,
right?
right.
Like, they're just like, sometimes PhDs, sometimes, masters in sports science and nutrition, whatever that may be. Like, they just don't, like, this is their secondary. Like, they don't know a lot, and so it's like, how do you help them and support them in the right ways?
Got it. What is your approach to, and I know this, from Momentous, on the actual sourcing side, and the sourcing, raw ingredients, also the manufacturing, and what do other supplement brands maybe get wrong, and where we as consumers can obviously become more educated when we even see labels or supplements, and maybe we actually can't see what's behind the scenes.
I kind of boil it down to a couple of things. Where, like, when I think about the supplement space, and why do I want to be like the supplement company, and what does that mean? But like, I think there's a big lack of trust in the space. Like, most people are like, yeah, I know these things can be good for me, but what, and like, are these good companies? They know there's not a lot of regulation, not sure how much. Then there's a transparency of like, what is actually in it? Where is it coming from? It doesn't exist, which leads to lack of trust. And then there's this big piece around clarity. And like, clarity is noise. There is so much noise, right? Like, Mike, you walk into the store, you walk into any grocery store, there's probably a whole half of an aisle of a grocery store dedicated to this category. What do you do? Where do you start? What's important? And so it's like this lack of trust, transparency, and then a massive amount of noise, which lacks clarity, right? And so, like, that's what's wrong with this space, right? In my opinion. So you go back to transparency. This was really eye opening to me, and it continues to be eye opening to me. Is the majority of the raw ingredients from our category are coming from places people would be surprised. Like, a lot of raw ingredients come from China, right? And I'll give creatine monohydrate as an example. There is one non-Chinese creatine monohydrate manufacturer in the world. One. It's called Creapure. They're out of Germany, right? If you don't source your creatine from them, you are buying Chinese creatine. Don't care if it says made in the USA. There is no creatine made in the USA. None. Zero. Consumers don't know that, right? And I think that is a problem, right? When we think about those things. When you think about other things in health and wellness, food, like these better for you things, it is transparency and clarity. Is like, here are the four ingredients, here are this, here's that. Like the supplement space and sports nutrition space is so far behind that, right? It's like so far. It's not better for you. You don't know where they're coming from. Nobody's going to the store and buying organic apples from China. Like that doesn't exist, right? But it happens in our space, and one of the very few categories that you put in your body that you don't know where things come from, right? And you don't like, and you actually don't have the confidence that's what's in it is in it. And so I think that is a really big challenge that to uncover, right? In our space of like, people don't talk about it because consumers and our category have been a lower price wins. And I think that is problematic. Whereas like that's not happening in health and wellness in any other category. Nobody's like, I'll go to the cheapest doctor ever. I'm gonna buy the cheapest, like I want to buy health food, I'm gonna buy the cheapest health food. I'm gonna go buy the cheapest at the grocery store. The cheap, like that is never the healthiest. But our category is the only category that have done that. And so it's just led to a lot of systemic problems, my belief. And there's a lot of great companies that do it well, but the category is massive. And I think until we have these conversations and help raise this category, because it's a matter of choice, and consumers dictate with their wallets, and consumers follow, right? Or I mean, businesses follow consumers' wallets, right? And if we can show this, it only is going to make like the category is big enough for so many players. It's massive, and like let's just raise the bar. Anyway, so soapboxing.
What's wrong with buying creatine that's sourced in China, or even supplements that are sourced in China? If you can just
I think
elaborate.
it comes down to right. If you don't certify your product, you don't know what else is in it, right? Like the Chinese supply chain is very convoluted, in terms of like where things are coming from. Creatine, the manufacturing process is not very clean. It's not. Like it's a byproduct of coke. Like coke is in like, making iron, or coal. Like it's a byproduct of that. And that is a problem. Also, it's a very, very dirty manufacturing process. So, you don't really know where their things are coming from, right? Like the purity is close enough, right? I would say close enough. However, there's been some cases where it hasn't been. But if you do the proper certifications as a company, it should be safe, right? So, like, right? But it's that transparency and quality. Like, is there anything wrong with an apple coming from China? Maybe, maybe not, right? Like, it's just like they have different practices of manufacturing and producing things than we do in the West. That's not right or wrong. But I believe consumers should make a choice, right, on there. And like there's a lot of things that are great that come from different places in this world, but food and things we put in our body are not always those things. Again, it's not that it like, is it materially different? No, but I don't like consumers don't know that. And when you don't know those things, consumers actually care. And when you find out, trust degrades, right? But also, if you're not third party certifying by a top body, you don't know. You fundamentally do not know, right? If it is because a lot of these other companies, like these are the same companies that make and sell pharmaceuticals that could be right cross contaminated and other things. And so it's like there is a lot of challenges. And I just fundamentally believe manufacturing is very different. And it is like the process that's used in Germany is a very different process that's used in China. And it like the product is essentially the same that comes out as creatine monohydrate, but how you get there is different.
So I guess based on your experience, the Chinese supply chain, in your mind, it just tends not to be as transparent when it comes to creatine production or even supplement production, and that's really like the main.
When it comes to a lot of the raws, it's like you don't actually know where it's coming from. And it could be coming from different factories. It could be coming from different regions, different farms. And it's also, from our perspective, like it's not a consistent supply chain, right? Because you don't have visibility into it, which is really, really hard in our category. And it's like you're buying creatine from a distributor who's buying it from a Chinese distributor who's buying it from multiple factories in China, right? That like it's just like for us, like we know exactly where the factory is. We can go visit that factory tomorrow, right? If we so choose. Like that is a very different relationship.
Which supplements do you think are much more commoditized or are commodities versus ones that actually are differentiated that you really should be paying attention which brand you actually choose from?
I'm gonna throw this one back at you. Beef is a commodity.
Right, but if it's grass fed or
There's
yeah,
a there's a
yeah,
very different subset of beef. There's prime beef, there's choice beef, there's select beef, there's grass-fed beef, there's natural beef, right? Like all of these things. There's different cuts of beef, right? Like so, like I that's a dangerous thing to say. Like I will say, most of our industry is commoditized, right? Meaning it's coming like it just that is what it is. But
but the actual quality that you actually can get. So these actually are differentiated
if we talk
products.
about protein, like,
Yeah,
and we just go to like whey protein
yeah.
or milk, like let's start with milk
There's
protein,
whey protein isolate. There's
commoditized,
yeah. Hmm.
right? But you have milk protein isolate, whey protein concentrate, whey protein isolate, right? Like, so you have all these different forms. It's like the different grades of beef, right? And then it's like, where are you sourcing this from? Like, what is the pure, like, what is it? Like, you can get 94% WPI, whey protein isolate, which is 94% whey protein isolate. You can get 89, you can get 85, right? Like, you can buy, like, you as a manufacturer, we can buy different grades of it, right? And so, like, whey protein is probably the greatest commodity, right? When you think about that. So it's just like there is, right? Just like when you go to the store, like apples are a commodity, but you have organic apples, you have Fuji apples, Fiji, whatever, right? Like you have all these different choices, and consumers understand that better in food. But like fundamentally, our category is just like protein's protein. And it's like whey protein concentrate is different than whey protein isolate. Also, if you choose to sweeten, like what are the other ingredients in there? Like we as a brand have chosen to never use artificial sweeteners or artificial flavorers, right? Sucralose is one of those. And sucralose is an engineered, right, sweetener, but like lots of studies, hey, is it materially bad for your health? No. It isn't good for your gut biome, right? Like it's shown to destroy, right, good microbes in your gut, and more importantly, increase the bad microbes. Why would you put something in a product that's meant to be taken daily that has potential implications to your GI system that is actually like now that we know is like your gut biome is incredibly important. And so it's like, but though like that's the difference. It's like, yeah, it's a commodity, asterisk, 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 right? Like in there, it's like other ingredients, sourcing, right? Quality, what's the grade that you're looking at? It's just like the consumer doesn't understand it because nobody's talked to the consumer about it.
Yeah. What are other ingredients besides sucrose that maybe folks should watch out for when they're actually thinking about which well, let's say like protein products that they should be getting.
Yeah, I mean, I think just fundamentally, like whey protein isolate is going to be the highest filtered whey on the market, right? It is really looking for like how many actually ingredients are in the back. Like if it's a laundry list of ingredients, it's the same thing. That's like right going to the grocery store and buying the most highly processed foods. Like you don't need a ton of ingredients in your whey protein, right? And it's something that we take a lot of great pride in is like how do you have the least amount of ingredients that make a high quality product? So I'd say that's sucralose. So artificial sweeteners and artificial flavors are really important, and the least amount of ingredients that you can find in there. And now, right, like if you like unflavored for us has whey protein isolate and prohydrolase, which is a digestive enzyme which helps enhance absorption. That's all that's in our unflavored. Now with flavors, like you add cocoa and some salt and some other like natural flavors in there, stevia and monk fruit as like natural sweeteners. But I would just say like it's just looking at the back of the label, and it's the same thing if you're going to go like highly processed food versus minimally processed food. It's like you want a clean label, right? That you can look at, and then I would say it's like like consumers don't understand the difference between whey protein concentrate and isolate. And isolate is right, like it's like buying prime beef versus select beef. There is a difference, right? Absorbability, right? Flavor, all those things like it matters. And so that's if you're doing something, in my perspective, if you're doing something for your health and longevity, like an investment of another 10%, so is actually not that much. But our consumers we've been trained to look at our category as a commodity.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Thinking about like the 80/20 rule when it comes to supplements, um, you know, w- which 20% of supplements do you think that delivers 80% of the benefits, or ones that, it makes sense to actually take every day?
Yeah, you're stealing my lines, and I love it. But I really believe in this 80/20 rule across the board in life, in how we operate. Like 20% of what we do drives 80% of the value. Right? Essentially is the model. One of the unique things we've had at Momentous is like I'm not a crazy innovator or right sports scientist or any of that. What we've been able to do is we sit at this really cool nexus, right, between practitioners, so like the people who in pro and college sports, to scientists, to like the trendsetters or tastemakers that are setting the tempo of health for the next 15, 20 years. Like we sit in the middle of all this. And so what we've been able to do is curate a really, really powerful, right, portfolio. My goal is not to have 300 products, nor is it to have one product that does everything. That I just fundamentally believe that's wrong. But then it's like, what does this group all really recognize as like the most important, impactful thing? So we call the three, because this is the question I asked. I would ask, if you had five things, what would you do? And I asked this of the ecosystem that we have, and of those five that everybody would come back, three were always the same: protein, omegas, and creatine. No cross reactivity, really, really hard to get from your diet or from your lifestyle. And they are the biggest levers you can do when you think about health and longevity, right? Help maintain lean muscle mass, help cellular function, and important for brain health. All things that are really, really important. So, like, how do we maximize our ability to maintain our lean body mass, which is one of the largest indicators, and train and recover from training? That is a huge thing. And it's hard to get enough protein. It's like zero point 0.8 to 1.2 grams of protein, depending upon who you talk to, per pound of body weight. Of like, if you're an active adult, that is a lot of protein, right?
It's a lot.
It's a
It's so
lot of
much.
protein. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's not practical to consume it all. Now, do you have to have it? No, but to be optimal and like as a active, fit adult, right, that we're trying to like close the gap between lifespan and health span, those things are important. And lean body mass is important. So those are the three things that it's like that's your foundation. And I struggle with people that are like, what about this? What about this? It's like those are shiny objects, and those work for right corner cases. But a lot of things can be solved with behaviors first. Like we have a great sleep product, sells really well. But if you aren't doing the fundamental lifestyle and behavior changes for sleep, it actually like no pill is going to fix your sleep, right? Can it enhance it? Yes. But you're better off investing in behaviors for sleep than taking a pill. However, protein, creatine, or omegas, those are essential nutrients, right? Really hard to get from your daily diet, right? Like magnesium, L-threonate, apigenin, right? Like those things are awesome. They can help you sleep, but they aren't like you don't actually need them to sleep.
Right. Right. That makes sense. I mean, like having a good routine, maybe not much screen time, for example, right before you go to bed, and other kind of habits that actually get you in the mood. Your body realizing that okay, it's bedtime. That we're actually that you're kind of programming your body to actually uh, go to sleep naturally. That makes a lot of sense in terms of the 80/20. Protein, omegas, and then also creatine as the big three per se. And I agree with you. I mean I try to have 1 gram per pound every day, but it is so challenging. Or can be challenging
It's
to
just it's
to
an
actually get it.
easy way
So
to augment. That's all it
yeah,
is, right? Like
is there a max? Is there a max you can have probably of powder
of
or
powder,
of
no. I mean, you're gonna like right,
I mean don't
like
yeah.
anything, right? If you do too much of anything, like I'm sure if you consumed all of your protein,
All of your protein by powder, that's not
you'd
great.
probably have some GI issues,
Yeah,
right?
for
Like,
sure.
because you guess what? You need fiber in your diets, you need fat in your diet, you need
Yeah.
all these other things.
Everything
It's
else
like
that kinda comes
this
to you
is
solid protein.
this is supplemental, right? Like
Yeah.
nothing that I said should take place of a well balanced good diet. If you're like well balanced good diet, like that is right, like that's like sleeping and moving. Like those things are like requirements of being a human. So I think it's just it's such an interesting thing, and then everything else just cascades beyond that. But if you like master the things that if you do for long periods of time have big impacts. Now sometimes you need to augment with this or that. Like I'll do collagen for an example. Like collagen has really awesome data around connective tissue health, right? Joints, ligaments, tendons. I played professional football. I've had a ton of surgeries, right? I've torn a ton of ligaments and tendons. That is a limiting factor in my life. I need to do as much as I can to increase like the longevity of my wheels. Mike, I don't know your background, but my guess is you have a lot less miles on that car than I do, right? And so therefore collagen rises up to my level of like that goes right below my big 3. Not for everybody, right? And sometimes it's just like, hey, I tore my ACL skiing. I'm going to do this pre-surgery and post-surgery, right? And that's all you need. But like, it just depends. It's all like once you get below that, it's what are your goals and what are your limitations that you need to look at, and that's where that's where I think the challenge in our space is like people are getting swayed by here's this one thing that does everything, and it's like the magic pill is exercise and sleep. Well,
Yeah.
that's the magic pill. Like the problem is like it's not a pill, and they're actually way harder than you think.
But I think it's quite clever because I was gonna ask you what should supplements be like individualized versus, versus general, but it seems like you all at Momentous, you do a pretty good job in terms I mean, an awesome job of showing kind of like these are kind of like the core things that you should really focus on and you also bundle them in, creatine, omegas, and then also protein. But then as well that we have these other options, the other products that actually might be tailored much more maybe individualized in terms of what your needs are, which I think is actually quite kind of clever in terms of having a routine, having a supplement routine for everybody, but then based off of maybe other areas they might be struggling with, here's are maybe some more kind of individual ones too.
Yeah, as you look through our portfolio, like right below the big 3, we kind of have like athletic performance. We have like daily wellness or essentials, right? Like things like vitamin D and iron or zinc, and right. Then you have right what we call cognitive longevity, which is powerful. And then we have sleep, right? And our goal is to have the 80/20 for all of those categories. What is the 20% that drive the most amount of impact for people in those categories? Like create that, not have everything for sleep and not have like one thing for sleep, but have the core, right? And it's if sleep is something that you need a little help with, let's have what's right in there. That has good data, right? That can have an impact, right? But like the not be everything, and like let's help guide people into that. But it does come down like, and so when I think about, people always ask me what should I do, right? Like they ask me three questions: what the hell is Momentous? Oh, you're just a supplement company. What makes you special? And then it's, oh shit, what should I take? And that what should I take is where the Momentous three came from. Because without knowing you, Mike, the big three, the Momentous three are the only things I want to talk about. Master those. But then it comes down to like what you care about, what are your limitations? What are you trying to achieve? And then you go that next level down and pick those. But I can't just say, well, you should be taking iron and our sleep pack and this. It's like our sleep pack's great. Maybe you sleep awesome. I sleep really well. Like awesome, awesome. Like my sleep is not my challenge. So guess what? It's not relevant to me. Right. And so like I can't tell you, I don't know you enough to know like that is an opportunity to take your foot off the brake by helping you sleep a little better. Don't know. So and then I think like there was this whole thing, like this push to extreme personalization. I think it's really hard. I think it's unsustainable for a consumer because like, hey, if you get 0.9 grams of protein per pound of body weight versus one, doesn't matter. Frankly, right? Like as long as you're in like a 10% range, you're fine. 20% range, even you're probably fine. Right? Like if you make it so constrictive and so tailored and so personalized, it takes everything. Like, what's the point of being healthy if you can't have fun and have some freedoms and eat a pizza? I don't know. Like, that
That's
sucks. That
true.
seems not
Yeah.
fun. Like, the point of life is to live, and why you invest in your health and wellness is to do more of what you love and have more smiles and laughs, right? Like, I don't like we like it's just like so extreme, and I think it's so narrow minded to be like, we know exactly here's your magic thing, Mike. And it's like that doesn't take into account like maybe your blood work says that, but realistically, like you might have other like it's just we are complex beings, and I don't think like one like truly personalized custom thing is what matters. I think you have to figure out what works for you and what's the biggest breaks. Because you also only have so much bandwidth, so many resources, right? And what you will do habitually for long periods of time is the most valuable. And that might be I'll take omegas and creatine, but I hate fucking protein. Excuse me. So you don't do it. But guess what? That's better than you taking omegas, creatine, and protein for 3 weeks, stopping for 6, starting for 3. Like, right? Like you're just what are you going to do consistently over long periods of time and stick to it?
Yeah, that's a really, really fair point. Shifting gears a little bit too. Obviously, when you acquired Momentous and became Momentous, you you bridge this gap of having all this unique relationships with thought leadership, also being able to penetrate, the fitness community and the nutrition community in many different facets and ways. How do you leverage that? And as well, the human partnership that happened, a couple years later as well. How do you think about taking all this kind of thought leadership that you've built and trust that you've built, more importantly, and actually translating it and actually building out a consumer business? How are you able to do that?
It's actually been it's hard. I'm a like my background's not in marketing or brand or content or creative, right? What I care the most about is the Momentous standard, which is this 15 tenant thing that we built, our ecosystem, right? The people we surround ourselves with. Um, and we've honestly like what's been so valuable for us is we've never been a marketing company first. We've built a brand organically through our people, right? Through our ecosystem, through the humans. And that's it, develop trust. I believe the next step for Momentous is to not just have everybody else say that they trust us, it's to exude trust and become the leader in the space, right? By sharing these stories and by talking about the industry in a different way and trying to take away the noise and add trust and transparency. And like to your questions, like, do, hey, you should just know where your creatine comes from. Does that change people's buying habits? I don't know, but I believe the transparency on sourcing is important for consumers to know. I care. I know a lot of other people do. I still make some choices, but I like to know those things, right? And so, kind of back to that is we've done it really organically. And a lot of people are like, oh man, your brand and your marketing is so good. And it's like, there's 5 years where you looked at our website and like when I pitched our business to investors, they're like, do you know what you're doing? I'm like, nope. But look at all the amazing things that we have, right? Like we built a brand in the hardest places to penetrate. And that brand is now coming to life. And I think that's for me, like holding that very precious, like this being at the forefront of high performance is what will create longevity and momentous, right? Rather than another flash in the pan in this industry that is very, very common. Like, what's the next trend or the better flavor, this or that, right? Like, what we want to do is create a long-standing leader in momentous in this space, right? Long after I'm probably here, is like, how do you instill standards and how do you instill doing it differently and better than it's ever been done before into a brand? And that's what it's been known for. And this is not happens in a week, right? It doesn't happen in 6 years. It happens over a decade, right? Like always working to do this. And so I don't know, like I believe what we have to do and our next great thing to take it is, right? Like leverage our external and turn it to internal, to turn us to like that people are looking at us as a leader, right? Versus, right? Like Stacy Sims and Huberman and all these other people like that lifted us up. How do we, right, rise into our own, right, and create change and and be different? Because most of our consumers don't know our backstory. Most of our consumers don't know, right? As an example, like we've been working on a pre-workout for 3 years, right? Most of our consumers don't know that we pulled a product off the market that that was about $400,000 of net profit a month. And we just gave that up because we did not believe in the science of that product anymore. Right? Like those are the stories that we haven't told. And they're important to tell.
What's one book that's inspired you personally and one book that's inspired you professionally?
So I'll admit, I read occasionally. I listen a lot, right? On there. One of the books I love more than anything, full disclosure, he's a partner of Momentous. Michael Easter is The Comfort Crisis. I just like, I fundamentally like you read that book
Got me into rucking.
and
So good.
like how we evolved and like just doing
Yeah.
hard things and like how do we not like it's just something that resonated so deeply with me and I just think really defines some of the state that we're in as a world, as a society. On that, a book professionally that was really powerful for me is called Rocket Fuel. And right, we follow this operating system called EOS as a business. And Rocket Fuel basically is the definition or defines, right, this duo leadership role at the top between an integrator and a visionary, right? And how those two become the strongest dynamic in a business. And so, like, you kind of got from me like my background is not in implementing process or making P&Ls. My skill and passion is around innovation, science, sales, like right external, like how do we live and show the dream and the vision of what this is? Like I create a lot of energy for the team, set the tempo, then you need this person behind. How do you harness the energy, put processes in place? So that book, Rocket Fuel, really for my co-founder and I, my co-founder came from McKinsey and Company, like, right, one of the ultimate, right, grounds for like business strategy process, right? And her and I have this visionary integrated relationship that is really, really powerful when unlocked. Now, like any co-founder relationship, it can be challenging, but like that, when we read that book, it was like, that is us. And it allowed us to like take apart what we were doing as a business and say where are our zones of genius and how do we focus on that? Like, Jeff, you do this, I do this. Erica, you do this, I do that. Right. And that was really powerful. So I would say like most meaningful business book for me was that. I don't like, honestly, like leadership books and things like that. Not that I don't love them or don't like, I actually don't love them. Like, it's like learning about leadership from a pro coach or a Navy SEAL. It's like, that's a very different thing than running a company. Like when you're a Navy SEAL, you have the 50 most badass humans in the world that will literally die. It's a very different type of leadership than, oh, I have a 24-year-old marketing manager.
Yeah, totally different.
Yeah. It's like doesn't comprehend, right? And it's like my football on a football team, there is some leadership traits, but that team, like they don't all translate because you have the 1% of the 1% of the 1% that will do anything. And in a business, you have this great diversity, right? Of people that are just like, it's my first job. I hate what I do. I'm doing it. To people who are like, I'm all in on the mission. To a founder that is so different. Like, it's just like this completely different. So anyway, so I've learned a lot on leadership by doing and seeing from my past life and like morphing what it takes, but it's very different.
Final question requires a very short answer. It says that you do work with 31 of 32 NFL teams that helps deliver peak performance. Who is holding out? What's the team that's holding out?
Nobody.
Nobody.
We're in 32 of 32.
You're now 32 of 32. Okay. Phenomenal. Okay, that's great. Jeff, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Mike.
And there you have it. Jeff, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was tremendous having Jeff on. I really hope you all enjoyed it. I certainly did. If you're loving the show, please subscribe at theconsumervc.com to receive a weekly newsletter of all the latest deals that are happening in consumer. And of course, an update of any time we have new episodes. You'll be the first one to know about it. Thanks again for listening.